going to talk about this. So some of the slides that I'm using, she just sent me the text and I cut and paste it straight in. So, and then Roderick is also going to talk to a couple of free slides. So we're just going to cover why we've taken out an Altmetric subscription, the initial trial that we just finished, and then the fact that we're going to be trialing this new Altmetric Explorer for Institutions subscription, and the Altmetric working group. I'm going to talk quickly about what Altmetrics are and what is Altmetric, difference, and then the Explorer for Institutions. Roderick's going to talk about connecting Explorer for Institutions to my publications. Then I'm going to talk again about the Altmetric project plan and ask for feedback. Okay, so Altmetrics, or alternative metrics, which is broader than just article level metrics, can be used to help us analyse how research is discovered, shared, discussed, and cited in a wide range of non-traditional online resources. When we use them as a complement to traditional citation metrics, they can help to show the fuller picture of a researcher's impact, particularly in the beginning phases before citation actually occurs. The library's research team required access to a tool like this because it will help us support our client base better, particularly with the Brave service, because part of the renaming of that service was to look more broadly at the metrics that are out there, not just focus on the traditional metrics. And ideally, this tool and any other tools that we get will be available to our researchers as well and other partners within the university, such as the research office and GRS and that kind of thing. Okay, so most of the partnerships team will be aware that we actually trialed 3 different Altmetrics tools beginning in August this year. And, well, we wrote the report at the end of October, but I actually think we still have access to Plumex. That's kind of still going. We started with Kudos. That was a pretty short trial. And then we looked at Altmetrics Explorer for Institutions. And then we looked at Plumex's, Plum Analytics, Plumex metrics and their dashboard. Then we went back and trialed Explorer for Institutions again because they released a new version. I'm not sure why they didn't tell us that. It was going to be so soon. But yeah, so we looked at the old version and then the new version. And then we did all this user testing, and we asked people for feedback, we asked researchers for feedback, and Altmetric Explorer for Institutions was the preferred option. So the subscription for that has been paid for now, the license agreement signed. We should have access really soon, and then we're going to, so the subscription that we've signed is just for 12 months, and then we'll review before renewing next year. So the point of this 12-month trial is quite similar to when we would trial a database. So we're looking at things like ease of use and amount of usage, value to users, both researchers and obviously for our team, preparing rave reports and that kind of thing. Return on investment, and whether it would be better to have a different Altmetrics tool or an additional tool. There has been an Altmetric working group formed, and so this was the information I was given by Tracy, that it maybe sounds like there's other people involved. So we've got Eva and Tracy and David Wright from the research performance team under Alistair Duncan, and Chin from Red, and maybe someone from marketing.
Yeah, Rob Trump, late edition.
Yep. And the working group is looking at how they can test Altmetric, explore for institutions with appropriate user groups, and make a collaborative, informed decision about how we proceed. Okay, so I just wanted to spend 1 minute on the distinction between altmetrics, plural, and altmetric, because it's confusing. So the term altmetrics was originally proposed in an online document called Altmetrics, a Manifesto, and that came out in October 2010, and it was written by 4 researchers, mainly based in the US, one from North Carolina State Uni, one from Victoria Uni in Amsterdam, and one from Wikimedia Association, and I can't remember the 4th one. And the dash actually was removed a year later because, so the dash was in there because it's really 2 terms coming together. It's alternative metrics. So they were originally, I guess the manifesto was written because what these researchers were proposing was there's too much information online now. There's way too much research for people to read and keep up with, and that we need better filters for scholarly literature. So they actually came out of a desire to try and filter scholarly communication rather than to measure it, I suppose. Well, I guess it was to help identify what we should be focusing on. So they represent alternative options to traditional research impact metrics that we're all familiar with, like scholarly citations, journal impact factors, and H indexes. That's what we mean when we talk about traditional research metrics. Okay, so Altmetric, with capital A, no S, is also known as altmetric.com, and it's a company based in the UK. And it was founded a year later, 2011, by a researcher in the UK. So not actually to do with this original Altmetrics Manifesto group, but inspired by that movement. And then Altmetric started getting a lot of funding, I guess, from Digital Science and came under their umbrella in 2012, which is good because Symplectic Elements, which is rebranded as My Publications at La Trobe, is also a digital science company. So there's good integration amongst with those two companies, Altmetric and Symplectic. But there's also it integrates with a lot of other tools and online resources and software. So things like Primo, which obviously Rachel was just talking about before, and Figshare, which Andrew was talking about earlier in the day. So when we talk about the integration with Primo, we like having those little Altmetric badges or donuts on the Primo interface so that people could see that this particular article or output was being tracked and what kind of attention score it had. So the Altmetric, the company, helps to track and capture and collate all this online activity that's happening around scholarly content, and it helps researchers to monitor and report back on the attention that their work is receiving. And they do this using all these little embedded Altmetric badges. And then the Altmetric badges, when you click on them, they go to an Altmetric details page, which I couldn't fit, so I just cut out some things that I thought were interesting. So I couldn't fit on one page. But these details pages are free and they're all just floating around on the internet, but they're kind of hard to find because you need to either click on an Altmetric badge or you need to download that Altmetric bookmarklet, and then when you find an article or some kind of research output that you want to see where the Altmetric is tracking it, you click on the bookmarklet, it says Altmetric this, and then it'll take you to this page if it exists, if it's being tracked. So just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the features on this page. As you can see, we've got the colourful donut with all the different threads. I chose this one because it's the third highest research output being tracked by Altmetric at the moment, but it had the most colourful donut. So the colours obviously represent different types of attention sources, and then the attention sources are mentioned underneath the mention by on the left-hand side there. So we can see things like news outlets, blogs, tweets, Facebook, Wikipedia, Google+, Reddit, although Reddit isn't a source that is partnering with Altmetric anymore, but they do have some older data there. Question and answer threads and video uploaders. There's actually a lot more than this. Something that isn't mentioned on this one is policy. So they're a little bit more rare, but I think they're the ones that our researchers are probably the most interested in. I have instead used the Wikipedia mentions. So all of those different colours correspond to the different tabs along just above where the Wikimedia stuff is, Wikipedia stuff is. So you can click on all of those tabs and you can get the actual mentions, so you can read the context of how it was mentioned. So I guess with citations or traditional, scholarly citations, sometimes it's hard to know whether this is a positive or a negative citation, because you will probably have to link to that citation and read, figure it out. Whereas if you've got people mentioning it in a news blog or a Twitter, it's pretty succinct, I guess. You can figure out whether it's a kind of a negative thing or they're saying definitely read this article. So it's got some qualitative data in there. I think the other thing which is pretty cool about this Altmetric details page are those other numbers at the top which give context to the attention score. Some people find the attention score pretty controversial, but I guess it's one of the defining features. So all the different sources, attention sources are worth a different amount of points, and there's a list of how much they're worth. Like a tweet is maybe worth 1 point or something like that, whereas policy is worth 3. So those things all add up. But the numbers at the top are telling us they're benchmarking the information. So that first one, it says that this is the third research. This is the third highest. Well, it's got the third highest attention score of all Altmetric articles that are, research outputs that are being tracked so far. And you can see how many, well, you probably can't, but it'll tell you how many outputs we're up to, and it's over 6.6 million. But that's growing every day. So that's the third. And then if we look at, so this actual article was published in Nature, and it's the second, it's got the second highest attention score for Nature articles, and you can see that's out of 42,000 outputs.
What was the article about?
The article actually it's got a pretty interesting title. It's called "Simulations Back Up Theory That Universe is a Hologram." So it's kind of not surprising it got a lot of attention. But what I cut off this page was there's actually a link to the View on Publisher website, so you can go straight there and read it. And yeah, so the other two are just other types of benchmarking. So it's talking about articles of a similar age or research outputs of a similar age. So this is number 1 for compared to similar age, and number 1 for similar age in Nature. So this one was published in 2013. And that's so all of the Altmetric details pages look very, very similar to that URL down the bottom, but the number's just different. Okay, so as I was saying, every research output that's tracked by Altmetric has an Altmetric details page, and they're free to access, but they're really hard to collectively search. So that's why Altmetric came up with, or I don't even know if they came up with it, I think people asked them for it, some kind of database where we could actually search all those pages. They actually brought out the publisher one before they brought out the institution one, which I find really fascinating. But obviously we're an institution, so we wanted the Explorer for Institutions version. So I think probably a lot of people in this room went into the EFI trial while it was on and had a look. That wasn't, it was kind of a tricky trial because we didn't have our own Latrobe data in it. We were using this fictional data from a fictional university. Well, it was actually real data from a fictional university. But once...
I don't know if this is how much.
Yeah, it doesn't. It was
Like,
tricky.
it's an imaginary garden with weird toads in it.
But the good thing about buying this subscription is that we'll be able to embed our Latrobe organisational structure and hierarchy into EFI, so that we can not just only search on, you know, the title of an article that we're looking for or an author's name, but we can search on a school at Latrobe or a department or a college or an organisation group or something like that. So EFI looks more like this, where you have an advanced search screen or a simple screen, and you can choose to search either our institution only, which is the green option on the right, or you can search, and I also think this is really cool, you can search everything in the Altmetric universe, so it doesn't necessarily have to be Latrobe's data. You'll know whether it is or not because it'll have that little blue tick as part of the donut. So this is just a screenshot from the trial data. So that's all part of the institution. So you can run different types of advanced searches. So if you had someone's name, you put it in, you could have all of their articles, you know, rather than searching one by title or DOI or whatever, they would show up there, and then you can analyze the data over there on the right and export the results as a CSV file, which I've done before, and it's pretty big. It's like one of the files to get out of my publication, so it's really, really long. It's got a lot of information in it. So I'm going to just hand over to Roderick to talk about how we will connect my publications with EFI.
Oh, no, sorry, wrong. Okay. So connecting Explorer for Institutions to my publications, which is really symplectic elements. As Lexy said, they belong to the same company, so I guess it's no surprise that they can link. There's a pretty straightforward technical pathway for connecting Explorer for Institutions to elements, to my publications. So there's a process that happens whereby the data from my publications will be brought across by EFI, which it looks like electronic fuel injection to me. So Explorer for Institutions will bring across data. So it knows how symplectic elements work, so it knows how to use the data structure in symplectic elements. So it'll bring across a set of publications to connect to our institutional account. And it also brings across data about authors and departments. So for some of the people here that will, a concern will come up there that we don't really have publications in departments. We don't have departments in my publications at the moment. So we do have a little bit of work to do there to really get the situation working, because for various reasons out of our control, we still haven't got an organisational structure in my publications. So that's going to have to be resolved before this can go ahead. But anyway, once it does happen, and that data has been moved across from applications into Explorer for institutions, then it should set up a structure there that we can use for the kind of interrogation work that Lexy was talking about. So the information that Altmetric would use is following. So author names, author identifiers, publication identifiers. So DOIs are very important in this process. Departmental affiliations, again, there's our bit of work there that has to be resolved, and the organisational group hierarchy is part of that as well. So it can look at an institution at various levels. So it looks for hierarchy whereby the department level entities are gathered together into something a little bit higher, maybe even higher again. So it can work at multiple levels of organisational group hierarchy. But it is expecting to find that data in a symplectic element system that it's gathering data from. And there are other ways of putting it into the system, but it looks like it's going to be a messy way. So we really need to resolve it in our publications. So it works with the API connection that is, I guess, so much of the way that a system like Publications works with its integrations with other systems. It's kind of similar to what's happening with Research Master. The Research Master is using an API connection into my publications to start pulling data across. So the API connection is a mechanism by which one system, I guess one machine, can talk to another machine using a common sort of language. So my publication, sort of Symplectic Elements, has its own language by which other systems can ask it to provide it with data and so forth. So it's well supported by Altmetric to take advantage of that. So we just have to do a bit of configuration work in our Symplectic Elements system in my publications to make that possible. It could be a little bit of a technical challenge because of the way ICT have gone about setting up my applications. Building the API connection is a little tricky in that to navigate, but we've got a little bit of work to do to solve it should be possible. So that's essentially all I was going to cover with that. So I'll read myself with this mic. I'm sure it's getting tighter.
Little project plan for us. So Roderick's technical steps need to be ready by December 10, just pretty soon, and then the working group is going to meet in January to decide on their approach in terms of, I guess, engaging users and collaborating. And there'll be a comms plan, create an action at the end of Jan as well, then testing throughout the whole year. Then we'll do an evaluation and review at the end of October. And then we'll make our recommendations. So whether we think we want to continue on with Altmetric EFI, or if we want something different, or we want two things, or whatever we build with it and see what happens. Tracy wanted to know if anyone has feedback on the plan, or wants to contribute, thinks they can contribute to the trial, or anything to add. I can take that now or maybe later.
So the timeline has to be shortened because we need a recommendation probably a few months before that. So
Yeah, that did look a bit late.
yeah, so I'll get back to Tracy about that. But we probably can only trial for the first 5 or 6 months of the year, and we'll have to have a recommendation because this is being funded by the library as a 12-month trial, and it's not actually appropriately a library expenditure, so we want to see how else it could be funded, I guess. Remember, I started out by talking about dollars, 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 and dollars. So.
Does anyone have any questions about Altmetric or the integration?
No, I just
Oh, wait, sorry.
Go, Clayton.
Okay, we'll go to Clayton and then Chris.
Me first, sorry.
Yes, please, Clayton.
I've got a question about the integration with my publications. When it's integrated, does that mean the Altmetric data will be part of the reports, or is it just a visual donor?
Well, I'm not sure at the moment whether the attention score is exported into the Excel file or the whatever you want to export it into. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm guessing it's probably not, but it would be really good work because
Yeah.
for your rate reports.
I agree. I'll have a
Would
look
simplify. Yeah.
because there's so
Otherwise,
much data. Yeah, there's so much data that gets exported in those files. So I haven't actually thought. Well, I have thought to look, but I haven't done it yet. So
So what files are you referring to?
just when we export information out of my publications, I have a good basic report and there's the research we can export themselves and publications.
My suspicion, sorry, I've read a lot of it along with it. My suspicion is that, sorry, Clayton, you need to hear this. My suspicion is that it only works to take data out of my publications into Altmetric. I don't think it's going to push data back into my publications.
But we already have the Altmetric donor.
Good.
So,
I don't think it's going to change it
okay.
from other ones. It's not going to make a difference for whatever. It's quite a big thing. So go on, Clayton.
When it takes data from my publications, does that then include the traditional, like, citation counts?
No.
No.
Okay. I'm just thinking, I mean, what I'm getting at here is that if we have one source that includes both the traditional citation counts and the altmetrics in a single spreadsheet, that enables us to generate these rate reports really quickly and efficiently. If we don't have that, I guess there's more work to be done. That's where I'm coming from with that question.
Well, we've already got Altmetric, the Altmetric donor on individual publications, in my publications. But I guess what Altmetric for institutions does is more putting together data across a number of people's capacity. So do you get that? So do you get anything at all at the moment on my publications?
I haven't looked in detail at every single row and column that's exported.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not.
I can't remember anything coming on the reports in my publications relevant to Altmetric industry. I just can't remember seeing anything at the report version.
I'll follow through with that, Clayton, and I'll let you know.
It's just no digital science, maybe, that's something that they can think about in the future if it can't be done yet.
Yeah, sure.
It's the same company that makes them both.
Yeah, and they export the Scopus and Web of Science and PubMed citations, so it's really just the same as that, basically.
I just wanted to know whether you mentioned it was dependent on DOI. So if we've got records in my publications that don't have a DOI, does that mean that they won't get the Altmetrics?
There's a few different data points that they look for, but the DOI is preferred. So yeah, as long as it can be linking to the unique source
Yeah.
of the other multiple versions.
So it doesn't use the title at all. It just uses
I think
the.
it needs more than just the title. Yeah.
Okay.
I can show you what they
Yeah.
look for.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Clayton.
Okay.
Just a comment regarding that question. When we had that Altmetrics trial, I'm pretty sure from memory every single record there actually had a DOI, so it does work pretty heavily on that DOIs.
Yeah, that was one of the differences, I think, with Comex and Altmetric. I think Altmetric relied a lot more heavily on the DOI.
I mean, that's a good thing actually, in the sense that, we've got a DOI, we've got a managing field, so it's not a bad thing. But, just trying to import data that doesn't have a DOI, I don't know how to help people that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lexy and Roger. And I just realised, we've got 3 people who are speaking twice today. I think they should get a special round of applause.
So, we're a few less than we started with, but anyway, so I was asked to wrap up, but as part of that, I'm just going to give a very short mini lightning talk that Tracy asked me to talk about. One other thing, and I mentioned it in my that outreach, which is the question of academics and HDR students actually linking their ORCID to their My Publication records. So it was handy that Lexy and Roderick were just talking about My Publications. And as I said, the take-up hasn't been as good as we hoped. I'm asking Roderick if he will help us find out the exact numbers. He's going to see if we can track how many My Publications pages there are for academic staff and researchers, and how many linkages there are in My Publications. And once we know that, but we do have a bit of a target of 25% to meet as soon as we can. So the ORCID team, which is Ange, Gillian and Elizabeth and I, are concerned to push out further now and extend our project out to getting people signed up. But we need some really good ways of doing it, some effective ways that we can do this. Whatever it takes, we'll have a go at. So one of the suggestions was that we physically go out to researchers or research areas that we know of and try and, that will probably be more likely to happen at Bendigo and Albury Wodonga, where there's a smaller field of people to go out and capture in their offices and not let them go home until they've made the link. But any other suggestions would be welcome, and also if everybody can keep that in mind, every time you have a conversation with any of our researchers, if you could ask them or check before you see them, if you know you're going to go and talk to them, just as you've been doing already, just even more, so that we can really get out there and get them signed up for their own benefit as well as for everybody else's. That would be fabulous. So that's my I haven't wrapped up yet, but
Alexis.
I was just going to say that Roderick and I saw the email from Wiley yesterday saying that Wiley was the first publisher to request authors have ORCIDs before they are accepting their manuscripts now. So it might be worth forwarding on that email as another incentive.
yeah. And certainly if we don't send an email, because we've got to be a bit careful about how many emails we send, certainly to keep in our toolkit when we're talking to them, to persuade them of how useful it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So now we'll start to wrap up. I just want to thank everybody who came, and a big thank you to Gillian for her fabulous job as MC. And another big thank you to our organising committee, Eva, Jenny, Samantha and Elizabeth. Jenny, we know, has taken on a large part of this and isn't able to be here today, which is sad for her, but we like to say thank you anyway. And to all our speakers and our guest speakers, most of whom are not with us at the moment, but in absentia, Okay, so I guess we will there will be an evaluation sheet. So just to get our minds into a space where we're thinking about today in a sort of analytical, sort of reflective way, just like you to turn to the person next to you, have a moment to think, what have you learned today? What are you taking away? What was most useful? One of those things. Tell the person next to you so it's in your head when you come to do the evaluation and you want to make a comment. So.
Well, I looked at there were issues with compliance with some theses where in the name, if there is part of an application for an IP, that they could lose out on their patent. And that is a bit scary. The problem is, what we would have to do is inactivate the metadata record. The problem is, what we would have to do is know which ones we have to do that to and identify them when we can lift them. So how do we do that? So there has to be, so we have to meet with the Graduate Research School, we have to meet with law and legal, we need to meet with the departments where this is likely to be an issue, and somebody that knows the right questions to ask, which would be Matthew, because he's the one that raised it. So, you know, so it's meeting with all those high up people who can properly advise us on the best things we can do.
That sounded really productive. I'm very excited. Bendigo, I hope that wasn't too loud and too much for you.
Turn it down, sorry. Turn it back up, that's right.
Okay, so now you're all got those thoughts in your head. The evaluation, Elizabeth tells me, is online and you will be getting a link to go in and do it. So that would be really useful if you could do the evaluation for us. Are there any last minute comments or questions?